Real life.
Superpowers.
This is really a manic depressive kind of state to be an entrepreneur because you reach incredible heights and you say, oh my God, I can't believe that, we passed, I don't know, whatever it was, the $1 million a month or whatever mark. And then later you get a phone call from an investor that tells you, listen, I don't believe in this market. It's not going to scale. And you say, shit, he's right. I'm never going to make it. What am I doing here? But you have to get over it very, very quickly. You have to kind of believe in what you're doing and be persistent.
Hey everyone, in this episode we speak with Noam Toister, CEO and co-founder of Bookaway.com, a startup that helps travelers with everything to do with ground travel tickets. That means bus tickets, ferry, train, you name it. In 2020, when the pandemic struck, the travel industry suffered the largest crisis in 100 years. Bookaway crashed from significant revenue to tens of dollars a day. Some people are generals of peace, some of war. Noam is a general of war. Instead of closing shop, he and the team raised $35 million and bought 3 companies. It's a story of resilience, of pushing forward against all odds, and of how choosing the right investors can make or break your chances of success. Enjoy your listen.
Real life.
Superpowers.
Up in the sky, it's a bird. It's a plane.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology.
It's alive!
Real life.
Superpowers.
So Noam, welcome to Real Life Superpowers.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Great. What are you up to these days?
Recovering from COVID. And that's the main thing last week. But in general, we're ramping up towards travel recovery in next half year, probably. So we're really busy in building the company back to scale, to getting back to where we were in 2019 and exceeding that by multiples.
And that's pretty much the circumstance since 2020, right? You're recovering from COVID from way before last week. You personally had COVID just now, but the company sort of got struck pretty bad.
Yes, Bookaway is a travel company and we were hit the hardest that you can get hit, right? So we're a travel company and we were focused on Asia in 2019 and 2020. When COVID started, we were basically one of the first companies to really feel the heat. We saw at the first month that it really kind of became a thing, something like 40-50% decline in bookings. And then the next month it went down to minus 98% of what we were. And it kind of stayed there for a very, very long time. I'm happy to say that we are at a much better place today because we actually made it through COVID and we actually managed to get the company multiple times bigger than what we were pre-COVID with different things that we did to take advantage of the opportunity that COVID actually created for us. But it wasn't an easy time at all. It was a really tough couple of years for us.
So there's a lot to unpack with respect to how you took this really difficult situation and turned it into an opportunity. But can you please, before that, walk us through that point before everything crumbled, and where were you? What were you doing? What stage was the company at, and why did you build it in the first place?
Yeah, so Bookaway is a ground and sea transportation booking platform. What it means basically is a site, a booking.com resembling site that you can book buses, ferries, trains, and cars with a driver all over the world in 110 countries. Now, the market that we're looking at is the travel market. But today, when you go travel, you book flights online, you book the hotels online. But if you're looking to travel inside a country, move between different destinations, depends where you are in the world, but it's somewhere between hard to impossible to book in advance. So most people would end up booking these services from the hotel or actually going to a bus station. This is how my company started from my personal experience. I actually I was traveling in the Philippines. I was trying to get to a very famous tourist destination north of Manila. And I just couldn't book the bus there. And I had to take a taxi, which takes 2 hours in Manila traffic to the bus station, buy a bus ticket, go back to your hotel, and then come back the next day to take the bus, and then meet all the other tourists that did exactly the same thing, because there's no way to book the tickets online. and it kind of seemed crazy to me back then. And when I came back to Israel, I kind of started a very small scale proof of concept website that sold tickets in the Philippines. And this is what we do in large scale today all over the world. We connect to thousands of transportation operators globally. And these are companies that historically are not very tech oriented. They don't have any online capabilities. They don't know really, they don't use any software, and it's really hard to work with them. And we bring them online in various ways. We connect with these thousands of companies, and we allow you as a customer to book these services easily, as easily as you would book a hotel today. We have all the information that you need, like what the bus looks like, how long the ride is, where you actually need to board it, which is actually, pretty standard information that you would need to board a bus, but it's really hard to get today.
Was this your first venture?
No, this was my second, third, fourth venture, depends how you count. I've only been doing startups since I graduated from university. I had one company that was a mobile advertising company that was pretty successful in Israel, and it was sort of turned into a marketing agency in Israel that worked for a couple of years, 3 or 4 years, and generated nice income for myself, but didn't penetrate into the US market as I hoped it would. And in the end, I kind of decided to shut it down and move forward to the next thing. I had a couple of other startups during the years while I was working as a freelance developer for a couple of companies. And this is one of these small ideas that I started, after a couple of other ideas that just didn't scale. And that thing just scaled enormously in a couple of months. And then I said to myself, okay, so this is how it looks when a proof of concept works.
And how did you know that you want to do a proof of concept in the first place? Was it based on your experience in your previous ventures? Like, did you sort of understand stuff based on what you already attempted?
Yeah, I think that was part of the lessons that I learned from the first startup. That I did a lot of things without really checking if the market is there. So I was really sort of assuming a lot of stuff and building and taking resources into certain features and products that we eventually realized that nobody wants. So I guess I did a whole lot of mistakes in my first company, and luckily still I managed to turn that into sort of a lifestyle business, right? So it started as a startup that wanted to conquer the world, but in the end it ended up generating money as a sort of a lifestyle business. But all these lessons that I learned while doing that, I think I tried to implement them in this startup. But I think that building a startup is and I'm borrowing this from Brian Chevsky from Airbnb, who said that. But he said that managing a startup is really like playing a different sport every 6 months. It's not like you're playing basketball and then you're just first you're point guard and then you're the shooting guard and you evolve. You're just playing basketball and then 6 months later you have to learn baseball. And so I had a lot of sort of knowledge that got me to this point, but now I'm still learning a lot of new stuff of what it's like to run a company that's hundreds of employees and globally scaled and so on.
So what were your key lessons that you entered this adventure with?
So I think the first thing that I learned was really start things very small. And what I did in the beginning is that I built a Wix website, sort of think it was Wix or something like that. And I just took $20 or something from people that said they want a ticket. And I sent some Filipino travel agent to buy the ticket at the station and take a picture of it. And he would go once a day and buy whatever amount of tickets I told him and then send it back to me. And I would send it to the customers and they would just go to the bus station and show the picture of the ticket and board the bus. And that thing sold, I don't remember exactly, but I think it sold something like $8,000 in the first month or something like that. We've only sort of basic advertising in Google and...
Which I guess you had the knowledge of from your first venture of how to advertise.
Yeah, that I think it's kind of basic because if you're building something from scratch, you really in the first stages have to be the guy that is an all-around player. You have to be the one that does everything, even if you're not a single founder. You have one technical guy probably, or two technical guys, but you have to do marketing, you have to do the sales, you have to do the accounting. And if you don't know to do this stuff or to teach yourself how to do this stuff at a reasonable level in the first kind of couple of months, you're probably going to have a hard time proving your concept and growing off a sort of a bootstrap budget, more or less.
So start small. That was the first lesson that you entered this with. What else?
Second lesson is that something that I got burnt with in my first startup is really make sure that you're building for a global audience, whether it's the US market or just global market, not optimizing for a very, very specific market. That's something that we as Israelis are sometimes not aware of, that succeeding in the Israeli market doesn't mean anything about anything else, anywhere else in the world. And you know, same thing as succeeding as in the Philippines, right? So if you succeed in the Philippines, doesn't mean you can be successful at the same thing in Brazil, for example. Although the Philippines is a big enough market, right, for itself. But in the end, you have to be sure that what you're building is actually scalable everywhere.
But how do you decision what geo? How do you implement that?
So first of all, it depends on the market, right? So if you're looking at, in our case, if you're looking at the tourist market, so you have to make sure that you're building something that every, you know, let's call it the subsegment of the customers that we're looking at are Western customers at the moment. So you would look at people that are in general speak English to some, either they're Americans or British or they're just European that speak English or another sort of European language. And they are traveling in a country that probably they don't know the language, probably is less sort of developed than the infrastructure that they used to. And they would need a service that would help them to move around that country. So that's the first kind of segment that you optimize for. Later, you can go and say, okay, so I'm going to build that for domestic travelers as well. So Israelis that are traveling in Israel would want to book from me maybe in the future. Filipinos traveling inside the Philippines could book from me. But in the first stage, you want to sort of nail a certain audience that is big enough, even if you don't move on to the next audience.
So you started your POC, and how did this evolve?
So I started that POC, and it sold, like I said, a few $1,000s in the first month. And then I said, okay, so, you know, let's add another route or whatever it was, and I'll send another agent in a different kind of region to buy ferry tickets from one island to another.
How did you find those agents?
I emailed them. I told them, you know, I built the site first, which is fairly easy. And I told them I have this site. I sell a lot of tickets. Do you want to work with me? And it's kind of hard by email, but you send 10 emails and, you know, 1 out of 10 says, yeah, okay, I'll try you. And that worked. And then I said, okay, let's try another country. So from Philippines, we moved to Thailand and Vietnam.
Who is we?
At that point, I had a co-founder already that was the technical co-founder. It's like a certain, more or less around that time.
Which is also interesting because you're a developer, right?
I developed, but I'm not a developer.
Okay.
You had a co-founder that came in, which is funny because like it's a co-founder. So
once I moved to Thailand, he already joined me at that point. I think I started Vietnam and Thailand by myself. And then I basically built a whole bunch of separate websites on Wix. And there was a website to book buses to Chiang Mai, and there's a website to book buses to Halong Bay. And then there was another website of booking buses or ferry to Koh Phangan. Like I just built one website on Wix and duplicated it a couple of times and just advertised it. And at that point I said, listen, I got to, I don't remember how much, but I got to a few tens of thousands of dollars of sales a month. And I said, okay, there's a market, there's an opportunity here, this can scale. And then I said, okay, I got to turn it into a real platform, a real website that you know, and I need a real developer.
So you came up and executed yourself. You did like a POC to yourself, right? Put your own money on that, which is like, you know, that few $1,000s, if I understand correctly, it came from that. And then what you did is you actually, let's say, filled in the marketplace by bringing, you know, every person that you could, getting them on board. But at what point did you have enough tickets to sell, enough ferries, enough trains, so you could bring users in?
That's a classic kind of marketplace dilemma, right? So the supply is first of all, right? So what is very convenient in the market that we're at is that the demand is very, very clear, right? So if you want to go from Koh Samui in Thailand to Koh Phangan, and there is a ferry that goes there, you're going to Google, how do I get from Koh Samui to Koh Phangan?
In that geo, were you like specific enough to find a niche that barely anybody did it on Google?
There were competitors, there are still competitors, but there isn't sort of a giant kind of gorilla in the market that took it already. There are a few competitors now that are competing to become the kind of booking.com of that industry. And I think we are the company that is best positioned to win that market now. But when I started 4 years ago, I think there was one very dominant company in Europe doing that, and a company that had a very good traction in Asia, which we started to compete with, and eventually breaking to the end, we ended up buying them. But there weren't huge competitors, right? So it was easy to kind of break into the PPC competition and put some dollars and then get on the search results. And once you do that, you just get the customers. I mean, and you understand when you get to a point when you say, okay, this is the product I'm selling. It's very clear to explain what it is. The customer knows what it is. The customer knows what he's looking for. I can put money into an advertising platform, whether it's Google or Facebook or whatever, and I get a certain conversion of customers. I pay $1,000. I get 1,000 customers into the site. Out of these 1,000 customers, 50 customers would end up booking a ticket. This works. The machine works. Now let's optimize it. In the first kind of months that we were bootstrapping, we were very careful with managing the advertising. So we made sure that we're always profitable on the advertising. And that's one of the amazing things about the company that we have today. We're ROI positive on almost everything that we do. And that's something that we started off initially with, and that allowed us to grow. So if we saw that we weren't ROI positive at certain market, we wouldn't go into it, right? So today we go into a market that we can lose money at because we have the money to lose. But when we were doing it from our own money, we couldn't even allow ourselves to lose $1,000.
At what stage did you bring in investors?
After a year.
When was this?
That was beginning of 2018. It was maybe not a year, it was maybe 9 months or something like that we were working just ourselves. And at that point we were doing, I think, close to $100,000 a month or something like that. And so we were actually kind of a company that had generated a lot of revenue without doing anything, without having any employees or nothing. And we were at a very good position to fundraise, just because it's much easier to go to investors and say, listen, you don't want to put the money, I'm just going to keep doing that and get my salary, and that's fine. So at that point it was much easier. It wasn't easy, but it was easier to get investors.
Why did you want investors?
Because at some point, if you want to become a big company, and there is an opportunity to become let's call it a $10 billion company, and there is an opportunity here, because just to explain, the market that we're at is a $157 billion market yearly. And 90% of it is sold offline in the street. So if you do a company that takes 1% of the market, you're a huge company. So there is a huge opportunity, but you can't do it without actually backing, like financial backing. Like the simple things like flying and meeting operators, we couldn't do because we couldn't afford it. So we knew that, we were at a point, and we told ourselves this, so either we take it into a lifestyle business again and kind of make a nice salary out of it for a few years. But I'm sure that at some point, Booking or Expedia or someone's going to go into that market and eat our breakfast, or we say, let's go big or go home. And we thought at that point, we were confident enough to think that there is an opportunity to become a huge company.
So you bring in an investor, and then you start rapidly scaling, right?
Yeah, so we brought in a group of angel investors. We raised $1 million in the pre-seed round, I guess you can call it. And what we did is we took, I think maybe 10 people or something like that. And one of the main things that we did is really scale up, grow the supply really, really quickly. So when we took investors, I think we were working with roughly 20 kind of transportation operators or something like that. And then a year later, we scaled it up to, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it was something around 200 or something like that. And that was another validation of the market, by the way, because one of the biggest concerns of investors was how would a couple of Israelis sitting in Tel Aviv convince bus companies in Bangkok and in Sao Paulo and Lima to work with you guys, and we proved that it's just easy. It's not easy, but it just works because they need it, and we're offering a product that makes sense for them, and it's a win-win for everyone. So we managed to scale the supply very, very quickly. And with the supply, it just was linear, right? The more supply we had, the more customers we got. And in the beginning, it's very easy to get new customers. Once you scale up and you grow, then the next level of customers becomes harder.
Yeah, but you say easy. I want to get stuck, but this is for entrepreneurs that you say easy. I know the easy you're talking about because you probably have an advantage, but let's talk about the easy, because when you say how the Israelis, how will they bring someone from Vietnam? The thing is, didn't you have to educate them on what performance marketing is? Because how do they get their money? How much they pay for it? Or
let me, backtrack for a second. Nothing is easy. All right. So nothing is easy. It's not, not, people don't run at you and say, okay, take my money and shut up. But once you come with sort of an offer that is a product market fit, all right, and that's why that kind of concept exists. Then you get to a certain customer, which could be a business partner on the supply side, or it could be a customer, a user, and the offering makes sense, right? And he says, okay, yeah, that makes sense for me. But the problem, then you have a whole kind of list of problems, starting from, hey, you're not a Thai company, we can't sign a contract with you, or I don't trust you because you're not, you don't have an office here, or I don't open my email every day. Why the hell, how am I going to get the bookings? And starting to educate them to actually accept bookings. So then it starts sort of you start to build the solutions around it. Most of the solutions you try to have as technical solutions that allow you to scale up quickly. Some of them are very manual solutions. And in the end, it's a process that you learn how to do it.
But the ferry that you're working with, so a ferry doesn't have to be a private ferry. It could be the Thai government ferry. They don't need to have better performance of their ROI. And then you have to educate why they need it. So that's a big challenge.
It's true, but the government companies, there are also government companies, kind of came at a later stage when we were big enough. And we were something that the market knew, and customers started coming to operators and saying, can I book for Bookaway with you guys? Then it was easier to work with them and convince them that, in the end, even a government company wants to make more money. But yeah, at first stages, government companies just said, we don't need it. I mean, who cares? So
it's a big market share for you. That's a game changer.
So globally, the world is the market is much more fragmented. Israel or even the different countries have maybe one or two big bus companies. But actually, if you go to markets like Brazil and Argentina and Thailand and Vietnam, you end up having not dozens, but hundreds of bus operators. So if the big company that is the government company, who's maybe 10% of the market, doesn't care about you, then you can go to the independent competitor and tell him, look, okay, I can get you more customers. And again, it's a product market fit. Then you realize there is a market for it. If you look at, for example, I'll give you an example, but one of our biggest operators is the Thai Railways, right? And that's a government company. And even today, when we sell tens of millions, they don't want to work with us because it's too small for them. It's not interesting for them. And we hack it, right? So we have a booth in the bus station, and still, like we did in the first days, every time we get a booking, someone goes out and buys the ticket, and we sell tens of thousands of tickets like that. But it actually enables the customer to book the ticket. It saves them time. It helps them to arrange their travel in advance, reduces anxiety of how the hell am I going to buy this ticket, right? Because you are sitting in Tel Aviv or whatever, and you're saying, I want to get the train to Chiang Mai on that date. but I can only buy the train ticket once I land in Bangkok, and I have to go to the to the train station. So no, you can book it from us, and we'll go and buy it for you, and then you just pick it up at the station.
Right.
And so you have to sort of stitch around a lot of solutions until at some point, I'm sure that the Thai Railway will work with us as well.
Right. I think our listeners, there would be something amazing that you're doing that I think a lot of entrepreneurs are stuck in that. So I would like a trick. I think one of the things that I like about that is each time you go, you say you're getting it ready for, now I understand the global culture, you're getting it ready, you have to understand how to get it ready from the user perspective. But there's a lot of startups that's like hyper startups where they can test those areas of supply. They're building a marketplace, you test areas of supply, and you try to get more and more customers on the supply side. Now, it sounds like you have a lot of times you also try supply and say, you know what, the Peruvians aren't for us. We tried getting enough, people there, and, there's not enough companies, or I worked a month and I only have 3 companies. It's not worthwhile. Let's go to the next one. And a lot of entrepreneurs don't know how to do the fail fast because they don't know all the information. So how did you decide to fail, like say, that's it with this geo on the supply side, I'm going next, or no potential here, let's go to Brazil first?
Try and fail, basically. But after a year or two, we kind of created our own methodology of predicting in advance what's going to work and what isn't. So we look at a lot of factors in the demand side, starting from Google searches, number of tourists in the country, competition, whether it's a government company or not, and we'll factor that in, and then we'll say, okay, this is probably going to work, or this is probably not going to work, so we'll leave it in the end. So it's a low priority, right? So we have this very long list that is we call the priority list. And there's sort of a algorithm that we put a lot of factors into, and then what it brings out in the other side is this is the first company you should engage with. This is probably the most likely company to make money for us or to sell. And we optimize that kind of algorithm all the time.
Do you remember a point in time where you told yourself, wow, okay, this is happening. We're making it?
Yeah, like, the funny thing about it is you say it like every month to yourself, and then, a day later you say to yourself, this is not going to work. So this is really a manic depressive kind of state to be an entrepreneur, because you reach incredible heights and you say, oh my God, I can't believe that, we passed, I don't know, whatever it was, the $1 million a month or whatever mark. And then later you get a phone call from an investor that tells you, listen, I don't believe in this market. It's not going to scale. Then you say, shit, he's right. I'm never going to make it. What am I doing here? But you have to get over it very, very quickly. You have to kind of believe in what you're doing and be persistent.
I appreciate your very honest answer. And I'm still wondering, though, before the pandemic hit, you were feeling pretty good, right? About the business, I mean.
I think that there was a certain point, that's kind of an inflection point or whatever, that we knew that this is going to be a company that's here to stay, right? Whether it's going to be a $10 billion company or a $100 million company, probably we're soon to like, we believed in 10 billion vision, but we knew that it's working. Whatever it is, it's working. If that's the question.
It does. Fair enough. And then somebody in China eats a bat.
Allegedly.
Yeah. How soon after that did you start telling yourself, okay, we're doomed?
We never really said that. I mean, we were in denial for in the beginning. And we were kind of lucky enough to have very smart investors that, sat us down and told us, look at what's going on. This is what's happening there. It's going to hit us in 1 month and we have to prepare. And then I kind of opened my eyes and I said, shit, they're right. And we did a lot of adjustments to make sure that we don't go bankrupt.
What did you do?
We had to let go of half of the team. At that point, we were 60 people, and we had to let go of almost half the people. We had to move off. We had to cut budget by 50%, basically, just to make sure that we were lucky enough to have to still have money in the bank at that point, right? We said, this is the money we have. We got to make sure we can make it through this, whatever it is. And that's that, when we ended up cutting people very, very quickly. It even got to the news in Israel, which is was in my view, was ridiculous, because we're a really tiny company and we were in travel. So we had to let go of people, but we were one of the first companies that actually said COVID is going to be a big problem. So at that point, we were the first company that kind of let go of people in Israel. And there was an article about us and all that.
How did you feel?
It feels like shit. It feels awful. And
were you struggling to go to work in the morning, or was this more of pulling up your sleeves?
Or scared that you did the wrong bet and there's not going to be a corona in another month, and then...
We never got into a sort of depression mode, I think, and not for more than half an hour, right? So you go to kind of deeps and downs, and you get out of it very quickly if you want to move forward.
So what do you tell yourself? I think this is crucial. At the end of the day, this is a huge crisis, and it's really interesting what gave you the strength to pull through and even come out stronger.
Good question. I guess it's just a matter of character. I mean, I think that COVID is one of the worst crises a company can encounter. But any startup, you're gonna hit very bad crises every now and then, and either you have the character and the persistence to just get up and continue doing whatever you're doing, or you don't. And I think that if we hadn't had it at that point, then we wouldn't get to where we were anyway. So I think that in that sense, we did what we do every morning, and we woke up and went to work. And what we thought, everybody thought, this was like March 2020, right? And everybody thought this thing is going to go away by the summer. Nobody thought it's going to take 2, 3, 4 years to get travel back. Everybody said this is going to go. Well, you remember they said the summer is going to kill the virus, right? Too hot for that thing. And no, that kind of lasted. And around September, it was kind of clear that it's a 2-year event at least. And at that point, we really had to stop and say, okay, so either travel is not coming back for 2 years, so we might, either pivot or take the tech that we have and see what we can sell out of it, like sell a different product from it, or maybe just go and hibernate. A lot of companies at that point sent all their employees home and said, hey, we will call you in 6 months. Or we kind of think of, is there something better we can do with it? And at that point, we got to thinking that, it's either go big or go home. And we looked at the market and we saw that, when it rains, everybody gets wet. So we said, if we're on zero, then these guys are on zero, and these guys are on zero, and these guys are on zero. And I know that they're the same dilemma. And then we just threw around the idea and we said, what if we buy them? What if we just buy that competitor and that competitor and that competitor? Let's see how much money they probably either gonna fire all their employees or sell to us. And that was kind of a crazy idea, because we were 30 people company here, couple of founders that have never done M&As. And we just went to our investors and we said, so listen, here's what we want to do. and they ended up supporting us with that. And we ended up convincing our competitors, like companies that were really our nemesis, that, if we get together, we can just become the biggest company in the market post-COVID, and there's not going to be anyone left after we're done with this crisis, and then we're just going to be the winner in the market. And we managed to pull it off.
And did you merge with them, or are they still holding some shares?
We acquired them, but we actually they are shareholders in the new company, right? So we kind of, that's a long story about who you buy and who you want to partner with, but we ended up buying companies that we trusted their management, and their management now has a vested interest to make Bookaway Group the leading company in the market. So if we succeed, they're going to get whatever we pay them. They're going to get, again and again and again. So that was the sort of crazy idea that we had, and it worked out.
You're acquiring these companies, you have to give them a vision. So what changed how do you see it differently, the opportunity?
So the market is much better than it was. So 2021, in the early 2021, everything was pretty down. But now the travel market is not on zero. It's depends what region you're talking about. Some places you're on 70% recovery. Some places, the worst places, you're on 20% recovery. So there is sales, and we see the sort of light in the end of the tunnel. So we think, it's not as bad as it was when we did these deals. By the way, when we did this, there wasn't any vaccine. That it wasn't even sort of out in the market yet.
Did you see any destinations changing in the tourism market? Any trends that changed because of this, or is everybody acting the same right after?
So it's kind of early days to answer that, I think. But what we do notice is there's more demand for private transportation rather than shared cars, and we seem to think to see a trend towards sort of more distinct destinations, sort of more far away destinations, which is great for us. Kind of quiet places rather than very dense locations. But again, it's kind of early to really have concrete data about it.
So what's the vision? Where do you hope that the Bookaway Group will be in a few years?
So Bookaway is going to be the leader in the transportation market, the travel transportation market. We're going to be the booking.com of this market. We already have actually the largest inventory of transportation operators globally. And we're going to keep growing it and allowing anyone that's traveling anywhere in the world to do it easily, conveniently, and without any anxiety. And we kind of think about what we're doing as the real travel, right? Because if you're going anywhere, if you're flying to any country, then you're staying in a hotel, you're staying. If you're flying, you're flying. But your actual travels, when you want to go from point A to point B, see this place, that's what we want to take care of. And it's not as easy as you would expect it to be in the 2022.
Yeah, especially I think in those areas.
Yeah, in those areas especially, but also the problem, by the way, is not as acute, but it does exist in Western countries also. I mean, although you have bigger companies in Western countries like Greyhound, Deutsche Bahn in Germany, all these services, it's still not super convenient to book it. And especially if you want to compare prices, if you want to travel using several different companies, the bus and then a train, then you can't do it unless you're using some sort of platform like Bookaway. So it's still not as convenient as you would expect it to be.
Maybe also Move It. I don't know if they're big enough, but maybe they could buy you.
I think Move It already is Intel, but
Right. I read that too.
But we don't compete with. We're not the same market actually. Move It is more in the providing information.
Yeah. So you integrate in a sense, or could.
Yeah, we could integrate with them, but we're not looking to sell. We're kind of at a.
Yay.
There aren't too many companies that could buy us at this point.
No, that's not the reason. Don't sell. No, I'm happy she was going for the sell thing. I'm happy you answered that. Sorry.
No, but what's the rest of the answer? So
the rest of the answer is that we're growing and we're aiming to be a profitable company, and we're going to keep growing, and we're going to get to some liquidation for ourselves and our shareholders and investors through some way, probably an IPO. But getting sold is not a goal, because if we aim there, then we're not going to get. If you build for sale, then you're not going to grow.
Yeah, Ronen here is nodding, but I just want our listeners to also, I guess some already know that, but Ronen is very much pro that approach. So
I'm not saying great things not to exit, but I'm very proud of entrepreneurs that want to grow, because at the end game is, I think it's just fun to see people that believe in themselves and know they can grow self-reliantly, and I'm proud of them.
I think that the ecosystem definitely in Israel is evolving to better support growing a company, to that point. And it's not as easy as it sounds, because you're saying, yeah, I just want to grow a big company and that's it. But it's not as simple as that, because at some point you spend many years on a startup or an idea, and the work is very, very hard. You end up working a lot of hours and not seeing your family, and so on. And any entrepreneur wants to see the point where he benefits out of it. And you need that ecosystem of sort of larger rounds that allow secondaries and investors that can support the sort of long-term vision of companies, to allow founders to hold on during the 100% of the journey.
What's your superpower?
I learn things very, very quickly. I learn everything to be, I can be average at everything very, very quickly. And that's something that allows me to really understand almost everything that is around my business, to be sort of understand every aspect of the business and kind of have an intelligent enough opinion on how to manage it.
Probably cultures too.
Cultures, yeah. Cultures, I think that's something that also, we have people that are very good with different cultures. I think that as Israelis, we're a little bit better in communicating with developing countries, kind of cultures. One of the first things that I did when I started the company is that I contacted this entrepreneur that started a similar company in South America a few years before that and closed it. So I sent him a message on LinkedIn. I said, "So what do you mind telling me what went wrong?" And he said, I just couldn't work with these people, right? So because he was American and he was working in Latin America, and he said they say something and they don't follow through. They set a meeting with you and then they're late by an hour, and yeah, and it's true. But we just came there and we said, okay, so we'll wait an hour, and we were very kind of. Okay. As long as we get the contract, we don't care. So I think that kind of culturally, we were much more flexible. So that allows us to work in different places in the world.
Right. And your kryptonite?
I think negativity, kind of negative people would be. So the one of the things that I find most hard to work with is kind of no people. There's two kind of people. Like one kind is person that tells you, no, it's not going to work. And the other one will tell you, yes, but we're going to have to sort of turn around the world for that to work. And then say, okay, let's turn around the world. So kind of no people are really, I guess, my something that takes away my energy.
Thank you for being a yes person who is turning around the world in your own business and universe, but actually helping many other people along the way to help them make their travel so much more convenient. And I very much hope that everything to do with the pandemic, which already seems like your past, but I hope that you just keep pushing through and scaling your company and making this really achieving the vision that you've set for yourself and beyond.
You have an allergy to know people, but you're still finding the opportunities and being optimistic in a really hard industry. So that's great for you. And, it's like a fairy tale as a pun. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope to see you IPOing and doing whatever the heck you want to do. You deserve it.
All right. Thanks for having me. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Real life.
Superpowers.
Up in the sky, it's a bird. It's a plane.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology.
It's alive!
Real life.
Superpowers.